Good morning to everyone here. My name is Justin Wax. I'm the new principal here at Denham Springs Junior High. And what an honor and a privilege it is to be able to exercise one of the most basic rights of an American, to be able to assemble together. It's truly an honor to be here this morning. First, I'd like to welcome our faculty, students, staff, parents, and most importantly, our honored guests. It is a privilege and an honor to recognize the service, sacrifice, and commitment of these distinguished men and women of the armed forces, especially those of you with us today. Your legacy is our freedom. May we never forget that the privilege of being a United States citizen was granted to most of us by birth, but maintained through the sacrifices that you gave. This morning we'll open with a benediction from Miss Miriam Russell. Ms. Miriam Russell is an 8th grade FCA leader here at Denham Junior. We ask that you would bow your heads and join us, if you please.
Dear God, please watch over all of these people today as we honor our veterans. I pray that the words spoken today find their way into the hearts and minds of all who hear them. Thank you for providing us with these brave men and women to protect our country. Please keep your watchful eye and protective hand over us always. And I pray everything we say and do brings honor and glory to your name. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. And thank you to our FCA sponsors who produce such quality students. At this time, we'd ask that you would please rise as members of the Denham Springs High School Junior Marine Corps ROTC presents the colors. We ask that you would please stand quietly as Ms. Caroline Young, Mr. Will Robertson, and Isabella Gilbert will lead the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the singing of the national anthem. Members of our choir will sing the national anthem. Thank you. We'd like to give a special thank you to Caroline Young, Will Robertson, and Isabella Gilbert for leading us in the pledge, members of the choir for the national anthem, and especially to our Denham Springs High School Junior Marine Corps ROTC. Thank you. We know that this is a special day in the hearts of many, but it has not always been recognized as a holiday. Here to give us a little historical account of the prestigious holiday is Ms. Ava Blackwell.
Though the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, November 11th remained in the public imagination as the date that marked at the end of the Great War. In November 1919, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day. The day's observation included parades and public gatherings, as well as a brief pause in business activities at 11 a.m. On November 11, 1921, an identified American soldier in the war was buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Congress had declared the day a legal federal holiday in honor of all those who participated in the war. American effort during World War II saw the greatest mobilization of the U.S. Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force in the nation's history. More than 16 million people, some 5.7 million more, served in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. In 1954, after lobbying efforts by the Veteran Services Organizations, the 83rd U.S. Congress amended the 1938 Act and made Armistice Day a holiday, striking the word armistice in favor of veterans. President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the legislation on June 1st, 1957. From then on, November 11th became a day to honor American veterans of all wars. In the United States, an official wreath-laying ceremony is held by each Veterans Day at the Tomb of Unknowns in Arlington National Cemetery, while parades and other celebrations are held in the United States around the country. Veterans Day is not to be confused with the Memorial Day, a common misunderstanding. According to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, Memorial Day, the fourth Monday in May, honors American service members who died in service to their country or as a result of injuries incurred during battle, while Veterans Day pays tribute to all American veterans, living or dead, but especially gives thanks to veterans who served their country honorably during the war and peacetime.
Thank you, everyone. In order for us to truly understand the commitment of our veterans, it's important to understand the history of the branches of the military that they served under. To give us a brief history of the United States Army is Ashton Hughes.
On June 14, 1775, the Second Continental Congress formed the Continental Army as a means for the 13 unified American colonies to fight the forces of Britain. George Washington was unanimously elected Commander-in-Chief of the fledgling army, and he would lead the colonies to victory and independence. In 1812, still suffering under British enforced trade restrictions and other unsettled disputes from the American Revolution, the United States declared war on Britain for the second time. The war was a back-and-forth struggle that is perhaps the most notable for the shelling of Baltimore Harbor, which became Francis Scott Key's inspiration for the Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem. The World War I era saw the creation of several important Army branches, including the Veterinarian Corps, the Chemical Corps, and the Aviation Section within the Army, Signal Corps, the precursor to the Air Force. World War II led to several more milestones in Army history, including the creation of the Office of Strategic Services, which began the CIA and Franklin Roosevelt's introduction of the GI Bill. 2 years after the war, the Army established the Medical Service Corps, later renamed the Army Medical Department. During the 1980s, the Army began to recognize to focus on training and technology. By the end of the decade, the Pentagon introduced plans to reduce total Army strength. In 1991, American and Allied forces responded to Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait. The ground campaign lasted just 100 hours before a ceasefire was declared. After the attack on September 11, 2001, American and coalition forces began entered into a conflict in the Middle East against terrorist forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, the Army is made up of more than 700,000 soldiers, including active and duty and Army Reserve personnel. They are doctors, lawyers, and engineers. They are electricians, computer programmers, and helicopter pilots. They are police officers, logistics experts, and civil affairs representatives. The Army constant need for a diverse range of individual soldiers, each with his or her own expertise, is what sets it apart from the other military branches.
Thank you, Ashley. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the Denham Springs Junior High Choir. The choir, under the direction of Miss Karen McGivney, will sing one of my personal favorites, My America. And I'd also like to extend a big thank you to Ashton Hughes for that great reading. Thank you, Ashton. Thank you to the Denham Junior Choir for that moving rendition of My America. Continuing with our histories of the military, Miriam Koronsky will give us a brief history of the United States Air Force. Miriam?
On August 1st, 1907, the U.S. Army Signal Corps established a small aeronautical division to take charge of all matters pertaining to military ballooning, air machines, and all kindred subjects. The Signal Corps began testing its first airplane at Fort Myer, Virginia on August 20, 1908. After more testing with an improved Wright flyer, the Army formally accepted this airplane, identified as Airplane No. 1, on August 2, 1909. When World War I broke out in Europe in August 1914, the 1st Air Squadron represented the entire tactical air strength of the U.S. Army. It counted 12 officers, 54 enlisted men, and 6 aircraft. In December 1915, the aviation section consisted of 44 officers, 224 enlisted men, and 23 airplanes. Still, a tiny force when compared to the fledgling air forces of the European powers. The Army Reorganization Act of 1920 made the Air Service a combatant arm of the Army, and the Army Corps Act of 1926 changed the name of the Air Service to Air Corps, but left on alternate status as a combatant arm of the U.S. Army. Due to the strong German Air Force, the U.S. realized the need of an importance for a strong Air Force. Plans called for 84 combat groups equipped with 7,800 aircraft and manned by 400,000 troops by June 30, 1942. All told, the U.S. Army Air Force strength in World War II would swell from 26,500 men and 2,200 aircraft in 1939 to 2,253,000 men and women and 63,715 aircraft in 1945. Before 1939, the Army's Air Arm was a fledgling organization. By the end of the war, the Army Air Force had become a major military organization comprised of many air forces, commands, divisions, wings, groups, and squadrons, plus an assortment of other organizations. The National Security Act of 1947 became law on July 26, 1947. It created the Department of the Air Force headed by a Secretary of the Air Force. The advent of nuclear weapons delivered by long-range bombers meant that the Air Force would play a decisive role in any future superpower conflict during the Cold War. To this end, the Strategic Air Command, or SAC, was created in 1946 to launch nuclear-armed bombs from bases in the United States and elsewhere. In 1956, SAC was also made responsible for the United States' intermediate and long-range ballistic missiles. Thus, its abolition of 1992 after the end of the Cold War, SAC played a leading role in the United States nuclear deterrent forces. The Air Force took the lead in extending the nation's defense into the final frontier of space, establishing early warning networks for aircraft and intercontinental ballistic missiles while developing rocketry and spacecraft technology that allowed us to land men on the moon and place satellites in orbit around Earth. Today, the Air Force continues its tradition of innovation, constantly striving to produce ever more sophisticated platforms in both air and space to protect the nation from those who seek to do us harm. Its pilots fly jet fighters that have not lost an air-to-air engagement in over 40 years, while its bombers can penetrate anywhere in the world protected by stealth technology.
Thank you, Mary. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the Denham Springs Junior High Band. The band, under the direction of Mr. Ryan Benoit, will play for your enjoyment Marches of the Armed Forces. As you hear your anthem for your branch of military, you are free to stand in recognition. Thank you. Thank you to our band for that stirring performance. I'd like to take a moment to introduce Lane Fobb, who will read the history of the United States Coast Guard. Ms. Fobb?
The Coast Guard is one of the oldest organizations of the federal government. Established in 1790, the Coast Guard served as the nation's only armed force on sea until Congress launched the Navy Department 8 years later. Since then, the Coast Guard has protected the United States throughout its long history
and served proudly in every one of the nation's conflicts. On August 4th, 1790, President George Washington signed the Tariff Act that authorizes the construction of 10 vessels, referred to as cutters, to enforce federal tariff and trade laws and to prevent smuggling. This was known as the Revenue Cutter Service. In 1915, the Revenue Cutter Service merged with the U.S. Life-Saving Service and was officially renamed the Coast Guard, making it the only maritime service dedicated to saving life at sea and enforcing the nation's maritime laws. In 1939, President Franklin Roosevelt orders the transfer of the Lighthouse Service to the Coast Guard, putting it in charge of maritime navigation. In 1946, Congress permanently transfers the Commerce Department's Bureau of Marine Inspection and Navigation to the Coast Guard, putting merchant marine licensing and merchant vessel safety in its control. In 2003, the Coast Guard is again transferred, this time to the Department of Homeland Security, where it currently serves. The Coast Guard is both a federal law enforcement agency and a military force, and therefore is a faithful protector of the United States in peacetime and war. In times of peace, the Coast Guard operates as part of the Department of Homeland Security, enforcing the nation's laws at sea, protecting the marine environment, guarding the nation's vast coastline and ports, and performing vital life-saving missions. In times of war, or at the direction of the President, the Coast Guard serves under the Department of the Navy, defending the nation against terrorism and foreign threats. On an average day, the U.S. Coast Guard conducts 45 search and rescue cases, saves 10 lives, saves over $1.2 million in property, seizes 874 pounds of cocaine and 214 pounds of marijuana, conducts 57 waterborne patrols of critical maritime infrastructure, interdicts 17 illegal migrants, escorts 5 high-capacity passenger vessels, conducts 24 security boardings in and around U.S. ports, screens 360 merchant vessels for potential security threats prior to arrival in U.S. ports, conducts 14 fisheries conservation boardings, services 82 buoys and fixed aids to navigation, investigates 35 pollution incidents, completes 26 safety examinations on foreign vessels, conducts 105 marine inspections, investigates 14 marine casualties involving commercial vessels, and facilitates movement of $8.7 billion worth of goods and commodities through the nation's maritime transportation system.
Thank you, Lane, for helping us gain an even better understanding and a better appreciation for our armed forces. Ladies and gentlemen, please once again direct your attention to the Denham Springs Junior High Choir. In just a moment, they will be leading us in a rendition of God Bless the USA.
It's a
Thank you, choir, for another wonderful performance. Now to bring us the history of the United States Marines is Angel Villagomez, followed immediately by the history of the United States Navy from Peyton Guzman.
The Marine Corps was founded on November 10, 1775, when the Continental Congress ordered that 2 battalions of the Marines be raised for service as landing forces with the fleet. After success in many campaigns, the Corps was abolished at the close of the Revolutionary War for reasons of economy. On July 11, 1798, Congress ordered the creation of the Corps, named it the United States Marine Corps, and directed that it be available for service under the Secretary of the Navy. In 1805, the Marines fought the Battle of Darra and Tripoli in response to pirate attacks on U.S. merchant ships. It was in the battle that they received the nickname Leathernecks, from the uniforms worn to protect against pirate sword strokes. This marked the first Marine battle on foreign soil, and is noted in Marines' hymn. During World War I, the 4th Marine Brigade fought the Germans in Below Wood near Paris. Completely outmanned with only bayonets, a few grenades, and rifles, the Marines launched a 20-day-long attack on the German forces, defeating the Germans, earning the nickname Devil Dogs. The most famous Marine victory came during World War II. At the Battle of Iwo Jima, the Marines were tasked with taking the Japanese island and fighting for 36 days to secure the island. This battle is immortalized by the famous photo of the Marines raising the American flag at the end of the battle. Marines have participated in all the wars in the United States, being in most instances first or among the first to fight. In addition, Marines have executed more than 300 landings on foreign shores and served in every major U.S. naval action since 1775.
On Friday, October 13, 1775, meeting in Philadelphia, the Continental Congress voted to fit out 2 sailing vessels under 10 carriage guns as well as swivel guns and manned by crews of 80, and to send them out on a cruise of 3 months to intercept transports carrying munitions and stores to the British Army in America. This was the original legislation out of which the Continental Navy grew, and as such constitutes the birth certificate of the Navy. On 30th April 1798, Congress established the Department of the Navy, recognizing the need for formal training of naval officers. In 1845, Secretary of the Navy George Bancroft founded the Naval School at Annapolis, Maryland. In 1850, it became known as the U.S. Naval Academy. In 1889, while fighting in the Havana Harbor protecting American citizens in Cuba, the USS Maine mysteriously exploded, killing all crew members and starting the Spanish-American War, whose victory established the United States as a world power. The U.S. Navy worked to modernize its fleet by building submarines, destroyers, airplanes, and more battleships. The new and improved fleet was tested in 1917 when the United States entered World War I. The Navy developed aircraft carriers, radar technology, and better weaponry for protection from air attacks. The United States entered World War II in 1941 after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. In 1991, the U.S. Navy participated with the multinational force in the liberation of Kuwait, which had been invaded by Iraq, sparking the Persian Gulf War. The Navy was able to array over 130 warships in the region, including 6 aircraft carriers. Providing a basis for air operations was also a major part of the Navy's role in U.S. invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq in the early 21st century. The most celebrated naval action of the early 21st century occurred hundreds of miles away from the nearest sea. In 2011, the Navy SEAL Team 6 located and killed al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in northeastern Pakistan. In addition to its military role, the Navy is also involved in a wide range of scientific research. Its microbiologists and epidemiologists study infectious diseases, both for the benefit of naval personnel and to bring humanitarian aid to afflicted countries abroad. Navy chemists research sustainable energy from sources such as the sun and the oceans, and Navy meteorologists study ways to better forecast weather patterns and events.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Paige. We would now like to recognize and honor our most distinguished guest. We ask that you please, students and guests, that you hold your applause until we recognize all veterans. Veterans, please stand or wave when your name is called so that we may recognize you. From the Air Force, Marvin Benton, A1C, worked in electronic countermeasuring. Caitlin Duncan, Technical Sergeant, served 12 years, worked in aircraft maintenance for F-15 Golden Eagle. Again, we ask that you hold your applause. David Terrio, Captain, served from 1975 to 1985. From the Army, Jamie Schutz, E-4 Specialist, served 1988 to 1992, including in Operation Desert Storm. James Duncan, Sergeant First Class, served 21 years. Also from the Army, Richard Fairchild, served from 1969 to 1971, served in Korea during the Vietnam War. Ashley Gann, E-4, served from 2004 to 2011 and served in Operation Iraqi Freedom as a 63 Bravo in the 285th Engineer Company. Mark Gaucher, E-4 Specialist, served 8 years. Ronnie Gilbert, Sergeant Major, served 30 years. Aden Inohosa, E-4 Specialist, served 4 years. David Jones, E-4, served 4 years, including stationing in Frankfurt, Germany, and at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. William Jones, Specialist, served from 1988 to 2004. Hardy Midkiff III, First Lieutenant, served 5 years. James Seal, E5, served 10 years. Virginia Westbrook, SP4, E4, served 4 years and was part of the WAC, the Women's Army Corps. Adam Young, E5 Sergeant, served 6 years, including 4 years with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment and 6 tours of duty in Iraq. Joseph Jacques Major served 2 years in the Army and 4 years with the Air Force, received an honorable discharge. Let's hear a round of applause for the Army and Air Force. From the National Guard, we recognize these people's service, and again ask that you hold your applause till the end. Seth Balvin, Specialist, served 3 years, deployed from 2020 to 21. Operation Inherent Resolve. Chris Gascon, Sergeant First Class, E7, served 19 years. Mitchell McPherson, Specialist, served 6 years. Kayla Meadows, Chief Warrant Officer 2, served 11 years, was deployed to Kuwait, Turkey, and Jordan from 2017 to 18, and currently works as a UH-60 Black Hawk pilot. Luke Withers, First Lieutenant, served 6 years. And from the Coast Guard, Nicholas Brandt, W3, has served 20 years and is still on active duty. Let's hear a round of applause for the National Guard and Coast Guard. From the Marines, Thomas Allen, Sergeant, served 4 years, including in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. George Martin, Lance Corporal, served 4 years, including in Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he was wounded. Rob Rogers, Sergeant, served from 2001 to 2006, including in the Battle of Fallujah, and was a scout sniper in the 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. David Smith, Staff Sergeant, served 13 years. Let's have a round of applause for the Marines. From the Navy, Christopher Cawthorn, E3, served 1 year and was an aviation mechanic mate. David George, Petty Officer 3rd Class, served 4 years. Alan Gonzalez, Petty Officer 3rd Class, served 6 years. Michael Pulaski Jr., Petty Officer 1st Class, served 6 years. Shane Sloniker, E3, served 2 years. Donald Williamson, E7 Hospital Corpsman, Chief Petty Officer, served 20 years, including in the Persian Gulf War, and was trained to be a medic. Let's hear a round of applause for our ladies. This year marks 100 years since the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier was established to ensure that the sacrifices made by our servicemen and women will never be forgotten. To each of you before us today, your names will never be forgotten. Thank you. We ask one more round of applause for these guests. To each of you, you will forever be remembered as patriots. At this school, we talk about pride, we talk about legacy, and you are living examples of that for our students. The path to our future is paved by your sacrifice, and while our words are not nearly enough, on behalf of Denham Springs Junior High and this community, thank you. And to our students and our guests, thank you for joining us today, and especially to our students, thank you for your conduct. You have honored these men and women well.